In this program, we're going to look at the plus plus, that it's the increment, and the dash dash, which is the decrement operator in the C language. We'll begin the program with some code already included. At the beginning, we have some integer variables: index set equal to 1, x equal to 1, and y equal to 1. And in the beginning here, I'm redundant and assigning the value 1 to x there. And I'm going to print out a statement indicating that we're going to look at the increment operator in what we call the post-increment mode. Now, let's begin by looking at this simple printf statement, which just prints out the value for x. So we haven't done anything. X is set to 1, and at this point, when we do the printf, then x will be printed out as 1. Now, let's add a printf statement where we're going to use the increment operator in post-increment mode. So I'll add another printf. Okay, double quote. Okay, x is equal to, and it'll be almost the same as the statement above, %d \n, comma. And instead of x this time, I'm going to do x, well, let's close this with a double quote, comma, and then print the variable x, and then add the plus plus operator to the right. Now, this is the increment operator in what we call post-increment mode. What will happen is that the value of x on this line is going to remain 1. It will not change, so the output that we get will be a single 1 at this point, because the increment operator does not take effect until after we finish everything on this line that is up to the semicolon. Right? So to make a note of that, then x here is still 1, but it is incremented after printing. Right? So at this point, the printf statement is going to print out the value of x, which will be 1, and then by the time we get to the next line, x will be equal to 2. So this is the increment operator operating in post-increment mode. Now let's build and print what we have, which will only print the value for x, and x here with the x++ operator. So I'll build it. Now we'll run it. And as you can see, the value for x is 1 in both of those printf statements. All right, now let's close this, and we'll come back and add another line, another printf statement. Now this printf statement is the same as the one we did before. We're just going to copy the first one, paste it in here. When we get to this third printf statement, the value of x is going to be 2. And that is because at this point from the second line, when we print x, x remains 1, but then we increment it. When this line is finished, x will be the value 2. So this printf statement now is going to output the value of x, which will be 2. So let's make a note of that here. Okay, x is 2 here. And let's prove that. So let's build it and run it. And you can see the output. The first print x will give us 1. The next one is also 1, but then we increment x afterwards. So the third printf statement then will give us a value 2. So this is how this post-increment operator works. Whenever you're on a line of code, and whatever that line may be, and whatever that line of code is doing with x, if it is working in what we call post-increment mode, x will retain whatever value it had prior to this line. All calculations, print statements, test, whatever is going on there, all those will be completed, and then afterwards x is incremented so that it will become 1 more for the next line that it encounters. Okay, so that's how that works. All right, let's close this down, and now let's move down and let's look at this increment operator in pre-increment mode. We will reset x to 1, so that line's already included. We will print to the screen pre-increment x, And in this case, we're going to put the plus plus operator on the left side of x. That means it's operating in pre-increment mode. Now the plus plus is always going to add 1, no matter what. If it's on the left, if it's on the right, post-increment, pre-increment, it just adds 1. So in this case, when we have the plus plus operating on the left side, pre-increment mode, what happens is we are going to add 1 to x before we do anything with it. Now on this line, we're just printing the value of x, nothing special, nothing going on here. Let's add another printf statement. And similar to before, I'll have double quote x is equal to and %d \n double quote comma. This time I'm going to put the plus plus on the left and then x right paren semicolon. On this line, x is 2 here. That is because we have added the increment to x first, then we print it. So in pre-increment mode, you look for this if it's anywhere on this line, anywhere at all. If you see a plus plus x on the left side of the x, then that means you're going to add 1 before you do whatever activity this line is supposed to do. In this case, it's just printing it out. Now, to doubly verify this, if I do the same as we did before, if I just print out the x value afterwards, then x is still going to be 2 down there. Okay, so that will not have changed. So x is still 2 here. So this will demonstrate the the increment operator in pre-increment mode. Okay, so we'll build our program, and we will run the program. Okay, so here's the first case. Post increment with x equal to x plus plus. Now to get to our next example, I'll hit any key to continue. And let's scroll down so we can see that. So in the second case, we print out the value for x. After resetting it to 1, we print out the value of x. It is 1. Then our next output line, we're going to increment x first. That's pre-increment. And then we'll print out the value. That is why x is 2 with the second line. The third line, we've not done anything to change x, so it does remain 2 here. And that's why we see our outputs 1, 2, and 2. So this demonstrates the use of our increment operator in what we call a pre-increment mode. Okay, now let's look at the other operator, and it's going to be called the decrement operator. Okay, the decrement operator is just 2 minus signs together, and it works in the same method, the same approach as the increment operator works. It has a post-decrement mode, which means that the dash dash is on the right side of the variable, and if we put it on the left side of the variable, then it's going to be pre-decrement mode. So let's demonstrate both of those. Okay, we're going to be decrementing 10, so let's start we're decrementing x, so let's give x a value of 10. And we'll write out our header. We'll write out the value of x. So nothing will have changed. X is going to be 10 at that point. And we'll do the same as we did before. So let's add another printf, right paren double quote, x is equal to %d \n double quote, comma, and we'll do x minus minus, right paren and semicolon. All right, so what that will do when I spell printf correctly, what this will do is x is going to still be 10. X will be 10. All right, but then we decrement x by 1. So the same rules apply. Since the decrement operator is on the right side, it's in post-decrement mode. So we carry out this line and do whatever it needs to do, in this case just printing x again. Then when we're finished with this line, we will decrement 1 from x. So afterwards, when we put another printf statement here, and again I can just copy this and paste it because I'm only printing out the value for x, then after we have decremented x, at this point on this third line, x will have become 9. Okay, so x is 9 here. Let's build our program to demonstrate this. The bill succeeded. We'll run the program. So we get the first case with the increment operator in post mode, increment operator in pre mode, and now we'll go to the decrement operator. So let's narrow down our output so we can see it better. Isolate that output. Make the window smaller. And let's put it over here. Alright, so here we are in post-decrement mode. Alright, so X was 10. We're going to print out X here, no changes, X will be 10. The next line will print out the value and X will remain 10 there. Okay, so you can see that X is 10, first line, X is 10, the second line. But after this line executes, after we finish everything on that line, we're past the semicolon, then X is decremented at that point. So by the time we get here to this line, X has been subtracted or reduced by 1. So we'll print out the value 9. And indeed, that's what you see. X is 10, and then X becomes 9. Now let's do a similar thing where we're going to use the decrement operator in what we call PreDecrement mode. So it will be very similar to what we've done already. Alright, so let's see. Let me keep this print statement and I'll take out the space that I just added. Alright, so in this case we're just going to print out the value for X. So it's still 10, no difference. Now we'll add another print statement. So I print F, okay, double quote, X is equal to %D \n, double quote. Oh, that's right, okay, comma. And then we're going to pre-decrement X. So we're going to do a dash dash on the left and then X right paren semicolon. Because it's pre-decrement, at this point X has become 9 due to pre-decrement. So whenever you have a line of code that has either the increment or decrement operator on the left, then you go into that line of code and you increment, in this case decrement X, before you do anything else, any calculations, any output at all. So X was 10 here. We look at this line of code, we see that there's a pre-decrement of X, so X will become 9. Then we execute the print part of this, which will print out the value 9. And keeping with our routine, if we want to print out X again after this print statement, then it will not have changed here. It's still going to be 9. So we can put our comment here, X is still 9 here. And let's demonstrate that. So we'll build the program. We'll run the program. We'll put it on screen so we can see it. Okay, so here's the case with post-increment X. Here is pre-increment X. There's post-decrement with X. And finally, to our last case, this is going to be our pre-decrement X with dash dash X. And if we look at the output lines, then X is 10 here. We subtract 1 before we're printing, so that means X is going to print out X will be 9. We'll print out the value 9. And at this point, it's still 9. So you can see those numbers here. X will be 10, then 9, then 9. So this demonstrates how to use the decrement operator in pre and post mode. So let's close this down. Now all that's great, and that shows you how to interpret the pre and post versions of the increment and decrement operators. But how do we really use these? In most cases, in programming in the C language, you tend to use these increment and decrement operators as part of a loop. So we're often, and here we see a while loop. We've set index to 1, and while index is less than 10, we're going to print the value for index. We'll add 1 to index. Okay, so this is one way that we could add 1 to index. And you have seen that we could do the assignment operator, plus equals 1. And this is a secondary way, or another shorthand way, that we could add 1 to index. Now we've got a third way. We could just do index plus plus and put the semicolon there. So this is a handy way to just easily add 1 to a counter or an index inside a loop. Okay, so we're going to add 1 to index with the plus plus operator. All right, now at this point, I've used the increment operator in post mode. This line, it really wouldn't matter. There's nothing going on here. I'm just adding 1 to index. So I could use this in the post mode, or I could use it in the pre mode. Okay, so whichever way you want to go with that will work just fine, because this is a very simple line of code. Typically, we put this in post increment mode, so I'll put this back over here. All right, so let's just look at this output from this loop. So this shortens the body of the loop a little bit too, because now we just have the index plus plus here, and we'll shorten it even more after I show you this example. So let's build this. Now let's run our program. Let's step through all of the cases that we've considered. So here's the x with post increment, x with pre-increment, x with post decrement, x with pre-decrement, and now this last one will show us the output from the while loop. So in this case, you see that we are outputting the values from loop 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down through 10. So this is just a quick way that you can use, you can add 1 to an index variable or any other variable for that matter inside a loop. Well, let's modify this again. Let's stop this. And typically programmers will even shorten this body of code by 1 more line, because you could just go ahead and do your post decrement as part of the print statement. Okay, so you can do it there. And if you do it there, then you don't need this line. So now our loop has really become just 1 line of code. The print statement will print out the value of x, so x will begin with 10. Well, x begins with 1, I'm sorry. So index begins with 1. Let's get this right. Index begins with 1. 1's less than 10. So we'll print out the value 1, and then afterwards with post increment, we'll add 1 to index. So it'll be ready to print out 2 the next pass through the loop. All right, so let's build this and run this case. Okay, the build has succeeded, so we'll run the program and we'll step through all the cases again. So let's go quickly through these. And here's the loop. Okay, so then this last case shows you the loop, and we only have 1 line of code in the body, and we've used the plus plus operator over here to the right of the index. So that makes this program even shorter. Okay, so let's close this. The final thing I want to show with this example is that if you wanted to use a for loop here instead of a while loop, then this is very typical of what you see in C programs. So let's take this part of our program, the index and the while loop, and let's just replace that with a for loop. All right, so I'm going to delete what I have, and here I'm going to add in the for loop. Okay, for index equals 1, semicolon. Index is less than or equal to 10, semicolon. Index plus plus. So with the for loop, you really see this very frequently when you are incrementing by 1 or decrementing by 1. So if we were counting down, we could do the decrement part here. Now inside the loop, I can just use the printf statement that we had before. So printf, okay, double quote, and we're printing out the value of index. So let's use %4d. We're making a little table here, or a column of numbers. So %4d \n, comma, and the value for index, INDEX, right paren, semicolon. And let's take that away. So here is another example where you can use the increment operator. And once again, you could use this in I guess you just need to keep this in a post increment mode here, because you don't want the index to be incremented before you get to this first print statement. If you were counting down, then you can use a decrement operator here as well. But anyway, let's take a look at the for loop. We'll build this program, and we'll execute the program, and we'll step down to the last part of this where we have the loop. And there you see it. So here is the same loop printing out the numbers 1 through 10 using the for loop, and we're using our post-increment operator as shown here. Okay, that concludes this example, which illustrates the use of the increment and the decrement operators.